Hello, folks. Hope you're enjoying your week, your off week, so to speak. Don't want to do. I want to do a little bit of a short video here to just highlight some things on the Anabaptist. I'm going to make a few changes here. I want you to continue doing your readings per the schedule. Do your reading reflections just as they are in the schedule. I don't want to confuse things by changing that. But this lecture, I'm just going to talk about the Anabaptist, just highlight a few things for you to pay attention to. I'll do Calvin. I'll cover Calvin next Monday when I'm back with you. We can do Calvin, spread of the Reformation, the Catholic response. We can do all that in the next 2 weeks. Which will lead us right up to the Unit 1 exam. So that way you don't have to have all that on video. I want you to just note 4 things about Anabaptists as you're reading my notes, as you're reading about them in Gonzales. Just note number 1, the radical conversions. I mean, these people were really genuinely, as we would say, born again, saved. I mean, there's a radical transformation in their lives, led to a life of service and really committed discipleship. Number 2, just note their willingness to suffer and die. I mean, these people were genuine martyrs of the faith. Third, notice their emphasis, and we talked about this already in class, on taking Scripture all the way, just taking Scripture to the logical conclusions in which the magisterial reformers were not willing and able to do. And then finally, notice the impact they had in such a short time in a short ministry, and I'll point that out here in a minute. Just to kind of just mention some of these top Anabaptist leaders. Conrad Grebel. He had a ministry that was only lasted, from his point of his conversion, a year and 8 months. I mean, he was 28 years old when he died in prison, left behind a wife and 3 children. Felix Manz, 29 years old when he was martyred and drowned. And I want to read you some things also found in this Anabaptist story by Estep. And some of these are actual, I'm reading from Estep, but he's quoting what others wrote at the time about these Anabaptists. This was written about Felix Manz. It says, on January 5th, 1527, he was sentenced to death. And quoting here, because contrary to Christian order and custom, he had become involved in Anabaptism, because he confessed, having said that he wanted to gather those who wanted to accept Christ and follow him and unite himself with them through baptism, so that he and his followers separated themselves from the Christian church, matter of opinion obviously, and were about to raise up and prepare a sect of their own. Because he had condemned capital punishment, most of these guys were very nonviolent and pacifist. Since such doctrine is harmful to the unified usage of all Christendom and leads to offense, insurrection, and sedition against the government. Again, if your church and state being wedded together like this, to oppose one was to oppose the other. Goes on, Manz shall be delivered to the executioner, who shall tie his hands, put him in a boat, take him to the lower hut, there strip his bound hands over his knees, place a stick between his knees and arms, and thus push him into the water. That way he can't kick his feet or his hands or his arms, and let him perish in the water. Thereby he shall have atoned to the law and justice. His property shall also be confiscated by my Lord. So that happened to him, to Manz, when he was only 29 years old. George Blaurock, 38 years old. And Estep also quotes some stuff about him here. Again, here this is quoting from the Martyr's Mirror. Because he had abandoned the office of papist priest, because he did not maintain infant baptism and preached a new baptism to the people, because he had rejected Mass and confession as instituted by the priest, because he disallowed of invoking or worshiping the Mother of Christ, for these reasons he was executed and gave his life for them, as becomes a soldier and hero of the faith. On his way to the place of execution, he earnestly addressed the people and referred them to the scriptures. So as he's being led to his execution, he's preaching. He's encouraging the people he's leaving behind. This is what he said. He said, I will therefore sing praises in my heart to thy holy name, and forever proclaim the grace I have experienced. I entreat thee, O God, in behalf of all thy children, preserve all forever from all the enemies of the soul. And he goes on and on and on. This guy's being led to his death, and he's singing, he's preaching, and he's encouraging the followers that are left behind. Balthasar Hubmaier, the chief theologian, and really all of them wrote, and all of them had theology, but he was the one that wrote the most. We know most about this biblicist Anabaptism from what Hubmaier wrote. Now, he died at the ripe old age of 48, so he lived a little bit longer than everyone else. Again, Estep writing about him. Now, listen to this. This is an eyewitness account of Hubmaier's execution given by Stephen Sprugel, Dean of the Philosophical Faculty at the University of Vienna. So he watched this. This is eyewitness account. Hubmaier, he said, was fixed like an immovable rock in his heresy. So, he's opposed to him, but he's arguing with him, disagreeing with him, but telling him what happened. With his wife exhorting him to fortitude, he was taken to the place of execution. And then when the company reached the pile of wood and going to burn him alive, this is what Hubmaier says. O gracious God, forgive my sins and my great torment. To the people he said, O dear brothers, if I have injured any in word or deed, may he forgive me for the sake of my merciful God. I forgive all those who have done me harm. When his clothes were being removed, he said, From thee also, Lord, were my clothes stripped. My clothes will I gladly leave here, only preserve my spirit and my soul, I beseech thee. Then, the eyewitness says, he spoke in Latin. He said, O Lord, into thy hands I commit my spirit. And he says, the eyewitness says, as they rubbed sulfur and gunpowder onto his beard, which he wore rather long, Hubmaier said, O salt me well, salt me well. And raising his head, he called out, O dear brothers, pray God that he will give me patience in all this my suffering. So basically he's saying, you just put the gunpowder on me, salt me well, so this will just burn me up, as quick as you need to. That was Hubmaier. And then we have Michael Sattler. Michael Sattler, he died, he was a younger man also, died at age 37. And Estep quotes some things from him too, says a few things about him. Well, this is the interesting thing about Sattler, and we have a lot of our heritage, as we've pointed out, that comes from the Anabaptists, but most of them were pacifists and really took to heart the turn the other cheek and the non-resistance that they felt like came from the Sermon on the Mount. Now, here's what Sattler said about non-resistance. He asserted the principle of non-resistance, and he was very blunt about it. He says, if the Turks should make an invasion, and remember, this is the time when the Ottoman Empire was controlling much of the known world and had pushed right up to the gates of Vienna, so they were on the edge of invading Europe. If the Turks should make an invasion, they should not be resisted. For it is written, thou shalt not kill. We ought not to defend ourselves against the Turks and our persecutors, but earnestly entreat God in our prayers that he would repel and withstand them. For my saying that if I approved of war, I would rather march forth against the so-named Christians who persecute, imprison, and put to death the pious Christians. I assign this reason. The Turk is a true Turk, knows nothing of the Christian faith, and is a Turk according to the flesh. But you, wishing to be Christian and making your boast of Christ, persecute the pious witnesses of Christ, and are Turks according to the Spirit. In other words, he's saying, if I'm going to fight anybody, I don't want to fight the Turks because they're ignorant, they're pagan, they don't know any better. I'd rather fight you supposed Christians who are persecuting us because you're supposed to know better. Now, we could debate and argue pacifism, nonviolence, resistant, put what that means individually, what that means for the state, and all that. But my point is, these people were willing to turn the other cheek and even be killed if that's what it meant. And then finally, Pilgram Marpeck. He did live a very long life. He was about 61 or so when he died. Anyway, just hope you learn to appreciate these Anabaptists as I have studied them more and read about them more and more. I really appreciate it. Don't agree with everything they say, but I agree with an awful lot. And I think even though we as Baptists don't have a direct connection to them, we can't say we're directly descended from the Anabaptists. There certainly is a lot of influence, and then also you could argue, but maybe it's not influence. Maybe if you just hand somebody the New Testament and say, read the New Testament, we're going to come to some of the same conclusions. Anyway, that's just to highlight a little bit there of the Anabaptists. And again, do everything according to the schedule on your readings and reading reports. And then when I come back the following next Monday, we'll cover Calvin and look at the spread of the Reformation, particularly into England. And then we'll look at the Catholic response and the Council of Trent and some of those responses and the Counter-Reformation. And then you'll get to do your exam 1. Don't freak out. It'll be open book. You'll have to do some reading, some research, and some writing, but you're not going to have to memorize a bunch of stuff. Hey, have a good week, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.